Hello again, Sunday evening. Welcome to Talking Point. We are live on GTV, we are live on GBC News, we are live on all our regional FM stations across the country. On Facebook, we are live at the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. And so a lot of water has gone under the bridge since President John Mahama was sworn in office on January 7. The ministerial appointment, the vetting process, and the fallout thereof, the key initiatives thus far. Tonight, we're going to be having a conversation around how the new government has fared in the last 12 days, especially in the context of its 120-day social contract with the people of Ghana. You can share your thoughts on social media, Facebook, Ghana Broadcasting Corporation, and the line we're going to be displaying on our screen later on in the program. My guest tonight, Dr. Kwame Asante, is a senior lecturer at Department of Political Science, University of Ghana. He joins me in studio. Good evening to you, Doc, and welcome to Talking Point.
Thank you.
Right. We're also going to be joined via Zoom. Yao Apia Latte is a financial advisor, Deloitte Ghana. He'll be joining us via Zoom. We're having a conversation around the financial side of things and how they've been happening since the new government took office. On telephone is Yache Derek Emmanuel. He's a research and policy analyst, the Institute for Energy Security, IES. He will join us by telephone for the energy bit of the conversation. Let me come quickly into the studio and pick the thought of Dr. Asante. He is with the University of Ghana. So, Doc, as I said, 12 days since John Mahama was sworn into office. We've seen the appointments. We've seen the key initiatives, how he's been wanting to deal with the energy crisis, the Boku crisis. We've seen the appointment is made to key SOEs and other agencies. We say, especially in the context of the 120-day contract, that John Mahama is on track, and he is going to deliver as he has promised.
Thanks for the opportunity. I'm sure in my mind that the way he has set his foot on the ground, there is nothing to convince me that he is here for business. So far, so very good. If you see the appointment, we've seen a lot of thinking has gone in, and we are seeing the caliber of people he has nominated for such positions, and we've seen quick response to certain issues that are very dear to our hearts. For instance, the energy crisis that we were likely to be confronted with. Immediately took a decision by meeting stakeholders and then addressing it, and we're moving on. That is very commendable. You've seen in his second tenure, stakeholder engagements that he's undertaking. That is very good because it is in consonance with the principles of good governance, which says that any decision you take involve those who matter in that sector so that their contribution could be inputted into the system, and when a decision is reached, they are ready to defend that decision anytime that decision comes on attack. Right. So on that score, you've seen that. And if you've seen the ministerial appointment, it is in line with everything that is expected.
What's your reading of the ministerial appointment so far? We've seen it's a blend of relatively young people, most of them former deputy ministers under his government. What's your reading? What do you think the president is seeking to achieve with the set of appointments he's made, ministerial appointments?
If you look at the appointments so far made, in political science, when we're appointing ministers, there are things we look out for. First and foremost, the issue of competence. Even though there are people who believe that loyalty is good, but I disagree, and I disagree vehemently, because you can have somebody who is so loyal to you, but he's very much incompetent.
But in politics, it does appear to put loyalty
Once you do that, you are going to suffer, because at the end of the day, is it loyalty you are expecting? At the end of the day, you are expecting results, and competence will drive home that type of objective. Yes, and that is not to debunk the argument that loyalty is also critical in the scheme of things. But your first and foremost point of consideration is what? Competence. That this person I have nominated or appointed, for instance, will he be able to deliver the public good? Will he serve the interests of the state? And for that matter, my interest, who is the president? So that aside, we have seen that he is also going along with the dictates of the Constitution. If you read Article 78(1), they said members of Parliament, MPs, you have to appoint majority of them into your cabinet from Parliament, and he's virtually doing that. If you've seen so far, a lot of ministers have come from Parliament, and he has satisfied that condition. Not only that, we are seeing also gender brought to bear. He promised you of 30%, women into his government. Right. And so far, what I'm seeing, if the trend goes the way it is going, I have no doubt in my mind that we are going to see even more than 30%. Right. That is from where I sit and what I see. And then the issue of regional balance is also critical if we want to address the provision in the Constitution, which says that yes, we should have regional balance. So far, what we are seeing, we are getting people from the nook and cranny of this country, particularly the regions, and they reflect how he want to go with the rules of the game. And then you also touch on the fact that the government is blending the old folks with that of young people. Right. People who were hitherto deputy ministers have been moved to head ministerial positions. The first ministerial appointment, the three of them, the Attorney General, the Finance Minister, and the Energy Minister, they were all deputy ministers in their various ministries. Right. And now they've been uplifted to ministerial position.
You think the appointment is inclusive enough? Some have said they expect some appointment from civil society organizations, people not too much connected and tied to the NDC party. You think the appointment is inclusive?
Yeah, so far, let us not focus solely on ministerial appointment. Right. But if you look at the state-owned enterprises or organizations, you are seeing such faces in there. Right. Look at even committees is forming. I just sat in your studio and I saw people from academia and on the Constitutional Review Committee. Yeah. Brilliant group of people, CPREMPE, CDD. You're talking about Isian San, which is a university lecturer, Kwame Kakari, the old professor of communication, and the rest of them, judges and all that. So all in all, we are seeing that the president is slowly getting the basis right to set the stage for better governance.
And he has realigned the ministries from 30 to 23. What stood out for you in that realignment? We've seen the Ministry of Information out of the list so far. I mean, you're a political scientist. You know how information very much important to governance, but the president has eliminated. But
you are seeing it in the area of communication. So you want to bet if I were in that seat, I would have put information ahead of everything. But that aside, there is nothing wrong with that. I am happy he's been able to reduce the ministries. He say he's going for 60 ministers. Yes, it's fine, but I would have wished that he go for 19 ministers, and it's doable. If you read the Constitution, it gives you an idea that the minimum when we're talking about cabinet should begin from 10 to 19. So all the important decisions that are reached by government are also should be done within this space of ministers. So I was thinking that can't you make it 19 and then 16 of them you select them, and then each one would double as a minister of state and a regional ministers. And so you have 16. Then the 3 ministries will be left for 3 individuals to handle. And then you are 19, no deputy ministers. But of course, I am not the president.
I mean, even with the ministries we've seen so far, it does appear it's a little bit difficult for for the president, even getting 60 ministers with the 23 ministries we have so far. And all of them very key.
Nobody
19 we very
nobody forced the president to come to that conclusion. And I commend him for that, because we don't need the number of ministers to be able to perform. We saw the previous government with all the noise about what the large ministers, and the results are out there for the world to see. So that small body is good, but I thought that you could have also reduced it to 19. If you didn't want the 19, you could have gone for 35. That is the 19 plus 16 regional ministers. No, deputy ministers, so that you use the bureaucrats to support, and then the vacancy that will be created, you fill the gap by employing young people into the civil service to learn the ropes and also one day take over. So all in all, I think that the president is on course. It's my hope and prayer that he continue the way he's embarking upon the program and get to the finish line with results.
All right, let me bring Yao Apia Latte. He's a financial advisor with Deloitte Ghana into the conversation. Good evening to you, Mr. Apia Latte. What will be your personal assessment of the first few days of John Dramani Mahama in office? Hello, Mr. Latte, if you can hear me. All right, so we just lost him there. Whilst we bring him back into the conversation, Dr. Asante, let's talk about the vetting of those three ministers. The minority has said, for example, that the finance minister designate, he was evasive, he was inconsistent. They've had issues with his performance at the vetting. What are your thoughts with how the whole vetting process went?
I think it went well. He was forthright with a lot of things that demanded real answers. Everybody and the way they look at issues. But for me, I didn't see that aspect you talked about. He was so evasive and all that. He was forthright with the issue, and then he spoke his mind. And that is all that a nominee has to do. When he gets to the seat, it's a different story. Then he's going to put flesh onto the bones that he has already made it known to us. So I think that so far he really drove home the points, the ideas that we needed to know. I am happy that they are stuck to the kind of promises that they made. It's good. And then we want to see how they're able to navigate their way through this difficult terrain. If you look at the nominee in the person of Dr. Ayini, a fantastic scholar and a practitioner, he demonstrated real knowledge as to what he's going to do. I have no doubt in my mind that the kind of exchanges that he had in Parliament speaks volume of the fact that he's really abreast with the situation on the ground, and that he can handle that portfolio.
Let me bring Apia Latte back into the conversation. If you can hear me, so I'll come straight to you with the vetting process, the finance minister designate. Do you think he sent a clear message, a clear signal to the investor community that he knows what he's about and he has what it takes to turn this economy around in the short term and in the medium term?
Well, thank you very much. I hope I'm audible now.
Sure, we can hear you.
Excellent. Okay, so thank you. Good evening to you and to your listeners and the viewers. So I guess the finance minister designates rightly and demonstrated strongly what his party views are and what his experience has also been managing the finance ministry or being part of the finance administration of this country for some time. As you know, they emphasize the position of governments, particularly around areas of taxation, inflation and exchange rates, as well as our current relationship with the IMF and the donor community. So in the first place, we know as a country, over 70% of our revenue is driven from our taxes. And so taxation is a key component of government plan or policy initiatives. I think some of the things that he highlighted, obviously the vetting committee members also asked follow-up questions, particularly on the taxes. The Minister of Finance designate mentioned that he looks to increase our tax to GDP ratio from current 13.8% to 16.8%. That is an aggressive target. And for you to be able to achieve that, you are either going to enforce existing tax laws or introduce new tax policies. But here, as the finance minister designate and government is also looking at scrapping some taxes they call draconian taxes. Let me give you an overview of what is going to happen. So the e-levy that was introduced had an expectation or revenue expectation of 6.9 billion, able to achieve 1 billion Ghana cedis. So if government is going to scrap e-levy, that's 1 billion out of the revenue inflow. What it means is that government should look for an alternative revenue of 1 billion or cut expenditure of 1 billion. That's a challenge to meet. The second one is other revenue sources, betting tax, betting. The finance minister designate mentioned that the estimated revenue from betting is about 15 million. That's something that you can easily scrap. The estimated revenue from COVID levy, NHI, among others, is about 2 billion. So in total, you are looking about in excess of 3 billion cedis in tax reviews alone. So if you bring in these tax reforms, you would have to look for an excess of 3 billion cedis from other alternative financing sources. So it's a good thing that we are going to scrap some of these taxes because, as we know, and from the business community have complained a lot about some of these taxes as retrogressive and as regressive taxes and necessarily do not benefit the economy. But what I expect to happen is that expenditure may not necessarily give you the results. We should look for alternative financing sources. And the finance minister designate mentioned that they are going to have meetings with the donor community, the IMF, among others, to get alternative financing sources. We cannot continuously rely on taxation as our main source of revenue. In Nigeria, taxation is less than 50% of their revenue sources. In Ghana, about 77% of our revenue from taxation. That is not an economy to run. That's a concentration risk. And so if you want to reduce the concentration risk, we would have to look for alternative financing sources.
So when it comes to improving revenue, he's been talking about cutting expenditure and cutting the wastage. Is it enough to bring in the revenue that we so much need around this time? So far, he's not really emphasized on any other revenue handle that is expected to bring revenue in the short term. He's been talking about cutting expenditure and cutting wastage. Is that enough? And if we're going to cut expenditure, which kind of expenditure should we cut?
So I think if you look at our expenditure pattern as a country, close to 70% is what we call statutory or mandatory obligations. One, we are expected to resume repayment of our external debt in February this year. And so that is something that you cannot run away from. So you cannot cut expenditure by refusing to pay your debt. We've already defaulted, we've deferred repayment, and it is now time to resume repayment. So that's something that you cannot cut. You can also cut compensation for public sector workers. That's a difficult one to do. And actually, you could get a lot of resistance doing that. The third one, it's also on capital expenditure, which obviously, if you promise to make impact, you promise industrialization among others, you'd have to spend on capital expenditure. So where I see some room for government to operate in cutting some expenditure is what we call subversion or allocation to department and agencies. So allocation to a local service or local government, ministry, department, and agencies. But that's also a very tricky one, because what you do is that when you cut those expenditure, you are also reducing the ability of this institution, department, and agency to also function. It will be a very difficult one. And I'll give you an example that when we had difficulties in 2022, the finance minister also announced some proposed cuts in expenditure. One of them being limitation on foreign travels to only essential travels, limitation on fuel usage, among others. those are things that you will probably be able to cut. But you should not focus more on cutting expenditure, because what you do is that it will be counterproductive. Some expenditure sources which can help you increase your revenue, some expenditure sources which can help the business of government to run, will be affected by just cutting expenditure. So we should not just cut expenditure. The government should do an assessment that for some particular expenditure, they are linked to revenue leakages. So when you spend on these activities, we do not necessarily get a benefit. And so if we are cutting that expenditure, we should also link them to a situation where those expenditures are not giving us the benefit. The second thing that the finance minister mentioned is tax exemption. We have some of the things that you do to be able to get tax exemption. In the last, something in excess of $400 million that was being granted in tax exemption. We should have a situation where we are not just granting exemption, but these tax exemptions are granted to strategic industries and strategic sectors of the economy. But in the long term, you are going to reap the impact of these tax exemptions. So that's another revenue source for government, that we review our tax exemption policy and we only grant to those that are supporting policies such as import substitution, those that are supporting our policy to grow agriculture and our policy to create employment for the youth. If you are granting tax exemption to companies and industries that are promoting this policy agenda, you get a benefit.
I'm going to ask you the last question before I wrap up with you and come back to you again for your final comment. The finance minister designate has given indications that we're going to be having a conversation with the IMF and the World Bank for extra financing. What would be the options on the table? An extension of the deal, and what would that mean for growth and for recovery?
So I think if I was sitting in the finance minister's shoe, I will propose two things. First, is a proposed exemption, a proposal for an extension of the ECF, extended credit facility period, and also an increase in the allocation. As we speak, a significant portion of the allocation, we had 2 tranches of 600 million had already been disbursed, and government has already utilized some of it. So if you have an economy that you want to rebuild, you are looking at alternative revenue sources without necessarily taxing people. You need more revenue, and you need revenue sources from sources such as the international development community. So first, I will propose for an increase in the allocation from 3 billion to about 4 billion or 4.5 billion. And I think the finance minister, they've made it clear that they could or they may ask for an increase in the allocation or renegotiate the amount that's allocated to Ghana if it's possible. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that we should consider extending it. Even if that's possible, we should also propose to extend it.
All right. So that was Yao Apia Latte. He's with Deloitte. He's a tax expert. We'll get back to you again, Yao. But let's quickly go to the telephone and speak to Yache Derek Emmanuel. He's a research and policy analyst with the Institute for Energy Security. Good evening to you, Derek. And so we've had WAPCO extend the scheduled maintenance, which was supposed to be in January 20 to now February 3. What next? Is that a temporary solution to a much complex problem?
Thanks for the opportunity. Good evening once again. WAPCO extending their maintenance schedule. It's a good relief for Ghanaians.
All right.
As it will give Ghanaians and the energy sector players the opportunity to make available alternative fuel supply. We know WAPCO definitely deals with the natural gas. Some of our thermal plants, especially those on the eastern corridor, depends on that. And the good news is that those thermal plants have an alternative, whether to use the light crude or the diesel or, let me say, the HFO. And so in this context, it has given the government the opportunity to be able to secure emergency fuel supply that will be able to power the thermal plants instead of the natural gas. And so now this is a good time for them to be able to plan ahead, look for the right source of finance and be able to secure those fuel supplies to be able to power the thermal plants so that the negative impact, the dire impact that Ghanaians would have been experiencing would not be experienced.
Right. So the storage mandate of BOST has come under scrutiny in this whole.
Your line is not quite clear.
Can you hear me, Derek?
Yes.
So I'm saying that in this whole conversation, the storage capacity, the storage mandate of BOST has come under scrutiny. Moving forward, what should BOST be doing, even now that we have a new CEO, acting CEO who has been appointed, to ensure that in emergency situations like this, they are able to quickly come through for us?
All right, thanks for the opportunity once again. You spoke about BOST and then storage capacity. That is good news, and then that is what BOST have been set up for, to be the strategic reserve for government for fuel supplies. And so we've been paying BOST margin. What is the BOST margin supposed to be used for? It's for the efficient running of the company, or let me say the organization. Now, we've had several management past. We've never seen their strategic direction as to how to increase the capacity of their storage capacity. We've not seen anything of that sort. And so the new acting CEO, who is somebody who has worked at TOR before and then understands the in and out of it, I'm sure he has a better appreciation of the challenges that confronts TOR. And then you put to use a better and efficient management of the BOST margins or BOST levies that will be paying all this per liter of fuel. And so I believe that going forward, that is what BOST is supposed to be. Give them the money, let them use the money to expand their tank farms to be able to store petroleum products. And for that, at periods where it is not right good, as we are experiencing now, even if it's the refined petroleum product, that fuel prices can be a bit stabilized in periods that on the world market we've been experiencing a skyrocketing prices. And so I hope that they deliver on that mandate. And then I have his assurance because I believe that he has worked there before, and so he has no room to give any excuse to Ghanaians.
Right. The privatization of ECG has also come up for discussion. I mean, you at IES, are you in support of the privatization of ECG? What form and shape should it take?
All right. So privatization of ECG, when stated as privatization, in the larger context, that is a good thing. But having a private hand in the distribution sector of Ghana's power is a good thing because, one, it takes away the political interference. I've always said the issues with ECG is just about leadership. And a leader needs to be firm, needs to be bold, needs to be courageous, and then be firm by all decisions, be more strategic. And so when you have political interferences, that firmness is gone. That boldness is no more experienced. And then because of the political interferences, some hard decisions that needs to be taken, you will not be able to take it. Some people that are cutting, power, or bypassing the meters and then doing illegal connections. Some of them are big business people. Some of them are big politicians or whoever. But because of the political interferences, you are scared. Who should I go and touch and who should I not touch? And you see, when you have a private sector participating in this, they have injected their capital. What they are interested in is how would they be able to ensure efficient utilization of their resources. And so they are more or less profit-minded. Profit-minded not because they want to make profit, but they will put to use the judicious utilization of their resources. So you can be assured that there will be a better management of ECG. In terms of revenue collection, look, you are operating over 80 different bank accounts. How will you be able to survive? And then they are always under recovery. Some of them, there isn't full disclosure when it comes to revenue that is mobilized. And the issue with ECG as it stands right now is purely financial. How will they be able to improve their revenue mobilization? And anytime the ECG experiences revenue lapses, it affects those in the power sector, or let me say those in the value chain. Because you are the only one who collects the money, and then you are supposed to pay those in the value chain, whether it is the IPPs, whether it is the VRA, the Brief Power, or the other sector players. But you know what? ECG will collect the money, pay themselves first, and choose as to which IPP they should pay and which one they should not even pay. And even complying with the cash waterfall mechanism has become their burden. And to give the private sector an opportunity, let there be a credible, transparent recruitment, or let me say, a bidding of the process. But somebody who has the capacity of both technical and financial, not just a private sector who just pass the back door, go and do things like we experienced the part of PDS and co. No, that should serve as a good lesson to us that we don't repeat it again.
Right.
And so now look for a private sector, not necessarily Ghanaians, but Ghanaians should have a role in it so that the local content can also be enhanced. But they must have the capacity of both financial and technical know-how, so that when they improve the revenue mobilization of ECG, they'll be able to cut down their distribution losses, and that can take care of those in the value chain.
Right. So, finally, before I let you go, and also because we're talking about the first, 12 days of Mr. John Mahama in office, what will be your own assessment of how the new government has handled the energy conversation so far?
Right. So, counting down 12 days now, the new government on the energy sector, what I've realized is that they are more proactive, they are more transparent, and then they want Ghanaians to have that goodwill with them. Because in the time past, what we've experienced is somebody who doesn't want to be more credible or who doesn't want to be more truthful with Ghanaians. And so when Ghanaians are experiencing lights out in their houses, they are telling them that is not doing so. When Ghanaians wake up and then there's no power, there's fuel prices continue to increase, then they continue to tell them that this one is not government control, government do not have any role in it. But this is government because of their past experiences. And then because they have the experience, they are more truthful with Ghanaians. In the case of WAPCO, they clearly told Ghanaians that, okay, this is the issue. WAPCO needs to undergo maintenance. But what is it? There's no alternative fuel supply. So they quickly put up an energy committee to be able to look for an alternative emergency fuel supply so that they'll be able to keep the lights on. What they said was that they are not going to shift blames and then they are not going to let Ghanaians be like, okay, we didn't come to solve problem, but we came to just complain. No, that is not what they are aiming for. And so I've seen that for the past 12 days in the energy sector, they have been more proactive. You can see the appointment have been made for NPA, EBG, lawyer EBG going to NPA. That is laudable. He understands the energy sector, being a regulator, and then he also being a lawyer. It also shows that he has the competence and the muscle to be able to manage that sector. He has both the academic experience and then the professional experience to be able to serve as a regulator for the downstream. If you look at the GMPC, Honorable Edward Bauer going there, that is another strategic sector. And then he is somebody who also understands the energy sector because he has been part of the energy committee in parliament for all this while, and they understand that the upstream needs to be enhanced so that they'll be able to increase our oil production. As it stands right now, we've come down to 32% of our oil food. Why are the big players going towards Cote d'Ivoire and co? We can have a regulatory system that will be able to attract them to Ghana. So that is another good sector. We are talking about the Petroleum Commission, a lawyer going there, somebody who has served on the board before. And so the person equally also understands the sector. If you take Boss, you have my big brother who is also going there, Apechi. He also understands because he has worked there before. So if you look at it, all the hands that have been brought on board are people who have a first bite of the sector, understand the challenges, and will be able to now manage it. Not as we used to have the energy sector, even the minister himself, is somebody who has been dealing with the energy sector all this while. And so I believe that not early days yet, but I believe that they'll be able to deliver. And we will hold them accountable as and when they need be.
All right. Thank you very much, Derek Emmanuel Yache, is a research and policy analyst, the Institute for Energy Security, joining us via telephone. We still have Dr. Asante. He's a senior lecturer, Department of Political Science, University of Ghana, in the studio. So I realized you were making some point from what Latte was saying.
Yeah, he touched on a number of things that the finance minister said. Yes, the difficult one is the taxes you're going to, cancel them. Where are you going to get the money from? But he did explain the options left for them. We want to see how best they can, address that problem, because over the years we have difficulty in raising revenue to run the affairs of the state. So that is the challenge. But hey, they are in government, so we are looking forward to seeing the magic that they can pull through, so that we all can have a sigh of relief.
What do you make of the vetting process? The minority says that the chairman of the committee has been gagging. He's not been allowing members from their side to ask questions. They feel he's been protecting the candidate who have appeared before them. What do you make of the whole process as you watch it yourself?
Yeah, I watched a little bit of it, but I did not see that. Because in Parliament, nobody can gag anybody. I mean, it's frowned upon. And so MPs who speak the way they want to speak. Look at the minority leader. You saw his, was it address or what? A very lengthy one. And he spoke his mind. And that is the work of Parliament. They will speak because, remember, they represent the people, their interests and aspirations. We are not dead, so they are there to pose questions. So how come somebody claimed that I'm being gagged? And then the whole exercise will be rendered useless. But that was not the case. But what I saw from the chairman is that he was trying to protect the frontier so that nobody could stray away and then get focus and all that. And sometimes you could be overtaken by those type of events that you stray away and then without asking the right questions. Of course, I also observe with some bit difficulty when some of the questions or some of the things put out there were unnecessary. Do you recall there was a point that they were talking about the Attorney General nominee? You seems to have very good eye for dressing and all those. And these were unnecessary things that we don't need. Right. If you look at the ancient Greece and how they instituted these things, all right, they made sure that very important questions are thrown to people, elicit the type of response that we want, so as to what, build on, and then get to know the person very well and see what he or she has under his sleeves, and that is what we are looking forward to. But by and large, I think we had a good account of what should transpire, and then those who also appeared acquitted themselves very well.
You think the questions elicited the necessary response, the questions from the minority side, the majority side? I mean, you listen to the majority, a lot of them will just make few comments and then pass. But for the minority side, there was not that vigorous questioning. Do you think that the questions that came up were strong enough to bring the best out of?
Oh, they were. Take for instance the issue of aura.
Right.
You saw the question posed to what is it? What is illegal place and all that? And then the nominee was able to give accounts and all that. Even though people have their own views and all that, my view is that oral is a good thing, and that all that I don't want them to do is that you are collecting information to pass on to appropriate agency or body to act on. So there's no point going on air to mention names, all that. Once you do that, then it changes the focus and direction of that body. But quite apart from that, oral is fine with me. If you think there is nothing that you have done wrong, you should not be afraid of oral, because you have not done anything wrong. But if you look at one of the challenges we've had in governance is the issue of illegal acquisition, corruption, and all that. The money we lose through corruption, they say it goes beyond $6 billion a year. All right, we are in IMF looking for $3 billion, and meanwhile, corruption we lose about $6 billion. So it tells you that if the government makes any effort to get the basis right relative to the fight against corruption, thumbs up.
The minority is saying that we already have established institutions empowered to fight corruption. The special prosecutor, SRAJ, the courts. Why do you create another layer of bureaucracy, another institution which is not recognized by law?
I was looking forward to this question when President Kufuor was in office, where he established an office of accountability. Do you recall that? Sure. Where people were going there to give information. What about that? Which law established that? Right. When somebody said, come and furnish me with information, is that people walk to your studios here and other media houses with information. Which law established that? Right. You can walk in an organization and say, there is this problem. Please, anybody with knowledge or information, come and give us information. You get information. The way you handle information is another conversation altogether. But getting the information, that is all. Right. Look at the police service. Sometimes they put a bounty on people. They said, if you have information, bring it to us. Right. So they said that we are getting information and going to pass it on to appropriate body. I'm not a lawyer, but I don't see anything wrong with it.
But you think ORA has the power to even invite, people? The
power, well, from what we have read, all that they do is what? Collecting information. To invite you or not, I am not aware of that.
Because the minority has said they shouldn't attend, any invitation.
Yeah, that is all that we are saying, that, look, they operate within their remit. But what I understand from the point of view of their role is to collect information gathering, and giving it to a body to act. And if you get information and you give it to other bodies to act, what wrong does it make? We get information from our community anyway and pass it on to appropriate, legislative bodies to act on. Remember in the Constitution that you and I, we owe it to this country a responsibility that when we get information, we pass it on to what? Police and all that. What about that?
Right.
So getting information and passing it on, that is simply what they are doing. They touch on issue of the tribunals, right?
Tribunals.
They're going to have the tribunal. That one, I have a difficulty there. My difficulty, I'm not a lawyer, but I have read the political history of this country and the way tribunals acted here. Which really became very uncomfortable and all that. I don't know, they have not defined in details what the tribunal seeks to do and all that. So we are waiting patiently. But from our experiences, the tribunal...
The Attorney General designates allayed, their fears.
Yeah. I mean, that is one thing, allaying my fears. And then also defining to me what the tribunal is going to do. Because my worry is that over the years, if you look at the courts, they have spent time to get non-lawyers off the bench, from magistrate or that they clear all of them. And that today, if you graduate from the Ghana School of Law, immediately you qualify, if you want, you qualify as a judge. They prefer that than somebody without knowledge in what law, which I agree. Right. So over the years, we have gone this far. So if you bring tribunal and you are going to introduce lawyers and non-lawyers, then I'm not a lawyer. Beat my imagination a little bit, right? Then you ask yourself how far we have come, what has happened to that. That is the little challenge that I have. But I'm looking forward to a proper explanation on the nuances of all this so that we can interrogate the issues better.
Right. One of the key assignments Mr. John Mahama has undertaken is going to Boko to, begin to resolve the conflict in that particular area. That's commendable. Looking at this, the speed with which
brilliant. Our people need peace, and they don't just need peace, lasting peace. Boko and its environs, peace has eluded them for a very long time. It is true that governments have done their bit, but we still have the problem lingering on. So for John to take this approach, it's my hope and prayer that he will be able to nip the problem in the bud, right, so that will bring hope to the people there. Recall, there was a time that the conflict got its apogee, that court had to shut down and all that. That's not good news. Right. And this is a place where business go on, there are students, people go on their normal activities and all that. So we want the problem to be solved once and for all, so that our people can be free from all these problems, and then they can move on well with their lives.
Right. And he's also been touching base with our West African neighbors. I think yesterday was in Senegal, and then also Gambia. Even before he was sworn in, we saw him have those interactions with, West African neighbors. Exactly what message is he sending across? What do you think is the main reason why the president has been having this engagement?
If you read the Constitution, part of it says that you want to live at peace with your neighbors, and then have friendly nations within the Committee of Nations that you can extend your hand to. Right. So it's part and parcel of those provisions in the Constitution. That is why the president is acting this way. Right. And then added to this is that it creates a certain enabling environment for peace to prevail, so that when there are differences, you can iron out easily. Look at the West African sub-region, we are virtually in turmoil. Right. It's a region of what? Turmoil. And that you have what? Democratic reversals, you have military adventurists having field day and all that. So for Ghana being what? A beacon of democracy, at least in the sub-region, one should expect a president from this country to be able to what? Extend an only leave to some of these groups so that they can also one day be part of that civilized political system of government. Right. So that the wind of democracy can blow across the sub-region.
Right. So in case you just tune in, you're still watching Talking Point. We're live on GTV. We're live on GBC News. In studio, we have Dr. Kwame Asante. He is a senior lecturer at the Department of Political Science at the University of Ghana. We also are joined via Zoom, Yao Apia Latte. He's a tax expert with Deloitte Ghana. Let me quickly bring him back into the conversation. So, Yao, the finance minister designate says that key priorities in the short term is to tackle inflation, reduce prices, and also tackle the exchange rate vulnerabilities. That's a tall order. Is there a possibility in the short term to bring inflation down to 8 plus or minus 2 in the short term?
Yeah, so thank you very much. So I think we've mentioned the issue of taxes and how government is seeking to address it. The next thing that we need to tackle is our debts, and then closely linked to that is our inflation and exchange rate factor. So maybe let me touch on the inflation and exchange rate.
Right.
So it's been a long time since we went way above the single-digit inflation. We used to achieve that so easily, and we're one of the countries that was achieving the single-digit inflation within the West Africa Monetary Zone. So for a long time, we've gone over the single-digit, we're in the double digits, and we are now in the 22% and over. I think the inflation in Ghana is driven by a number of factors, and I think two key ones you say is the imported inflation, and imported inflation is linked to the exchange rate. So if your local currency stabilizes, the imported inflation improves a little bit, because what it means is that the cost of importing goods and services reduces because your local currency has stabilized. So if we address the exchange rate issue, we address a portion of inflation, which is the imported inflation. The second one aspect is the food inflation. And as you know, we've had some erratic changes in our weather, which has affected our food production. And so it's something that we should address. We should have a way of incentivizing our farmers to produce more. If they produce more and what they produce is cheaper, we are able to affect possibly food inflation. So I think these are two key factors. If government seeks to address inflation, address the portion of imported inflation, which is linked to the exchange rate, and also food inflation, which is linked to food production and how cheaper it is to produce in Ghana or to transport food to the various sectors.
Yeah, we've seen the CD depreciate in the last couple of weeks.
Yes. Hello, repeat that.
I'm saying that we've seen the CD depreciate in the last couple of weeks.
Yes, so I guess we had a situation where in the last quarter of the year, the CD stabilized and driven by a number of factors, including the support that we get from the central bank trying to assist in managing that. We knew that there was some risk in that, and we knew at some point we will have some form of free fall. What government quickly needs to do is to step in, try to identify the cause of the depreciation and address it immediately. Because you can't have a situation where
all right, so
a stable currency over a certain period, and all of a sudden the economy, like I said, inflation is the number one, and two, it also affects cost of living. And so if you quickly address the issue, you hold on to a number of issues. I mean, there's not been a complaint from the general Ghanaian populace about increasing goods and services, etc. That's because when you stabilize your currency, you are able to address cost of living. You are also able to address inflation. Maybe to summarize, I think some of the things that I'll propose or some recommendation for government is what maybe I've summarized and I'll just send them out in a few minutes.
Right.
So the Minister of Finance designates, yet we approved Minister of Finance mentions his target of 16.8% tax to GDP ratio. It is something that is achievable if you look at what our peers are doing. Cote d'Ivoire is doing 18%, Nigeria is doing 18%, South Africa is at 28% tax to GDP ratio, and Seychelles is at 32%. So it is something that we can do it. Our neighboring countries are doing it, and other African countries that are in our peers are doing it, so we should be able to do it. But for you to be able to do that, we should not. And what I would suggest for government to do is that rather than adopt a radical approach where from day one we are scrapping all these taxes we call draconian taxes, we should have a progressive policy, revenue sources that are sustainable. So we should not replace them with revenue sources that are unsustainable, and then we are forced to introduce other taxes. So the finance minister designate said they are not going to be introducing new taxes. They rather enforce existing tax or amend existing regulations, which is a good thing to do, and we should be able to manage that. The last one I want to mention is our debt management. We have defaulted in our external debt, and that's not a good thing to have on the international market. We are going back again. We are going to start servicing our debts. Let's not run the economy in a situation where we default on our external debt. It doesn't help us and doesn't help the economy, even on the international market. What are the causes of our debt historically? One of the key issue or key sector that causes external debts or debt to increase as a country is the energy sector. And the good news is we have a plan to privatize the sector. It will address revenue leakages. It will address issue of losses, average technical and collection losses in that sector.
Right.
And if we implement that policy well, we'll be able to manage our debts in the long term. So I think these are things that we should focus on. And if we address them properly, we should be running an economy that is stable and that's also progressive.
Yeah, briefly, because of time and before I let you go. So we've seen the appointment to the Precious Minerals and Marketing Commission. Sami Jemfi is going to be the acting managing director. And in a very shortest possible time, he's supposed to be supervising the gold board, which is supposed to now handle the gold for oil and the gold for reserves program by the Bank of Ghana. You think the gold board would bring the transparency that the government and then in opposition has been talking about? Hello, if you can hear me. All right, so we'll try and connect to Yao Apialate. He is a tax analyst with Deloitte Ghana. Let's quickly come to the studio and begin to wrap up the conversation with Dr. Asa Asante. So it does appear the government is enjoying goodwill, so much goodwill from the people of Ghana. What do you think should be done to ensure that at least it lasts a while for the government to be able to run smoothly?
One, what the government promised, he must honor them. That is the first port of call. Two, he should be able to address certain problems within the shortest possible time to, bring relief to people. If we look at economic conditions now, it's so difficult for people to bear. So he has to work things out to create that enabling environment that people will be able to fend for themselves without much difficulty. That's one. Issue of power must be addressed head on. And then all the things he had talked about within 120 days, he must begin to put them on the ground. That will give people hope and confidence that the government is not going to take them for a ride. Remember that 4 years is long, but it's too short too. Because in the NDC manifesto, after 2 years, I think when they get to 2 years, they have to go and look for a flag bearer who would. And that will change the chemistry of the whole process. So this is the time to be able to get everybody on board and then, hit the ground running. I am happy that the president is not wasting time by appointing his people quickly so that they go to the ministry and begin to work. There is no time to waste.
Right. But the appointment is made to the government agencies. Is it a reward for hard work for the party, for a reward for loyalty?
The people that we've seen there, minus even politics, they can occupy any position, including some of them also vying to become president. Yeah. I have no doubt in my mind that academic qualification they have, professional competence, they are good to go, and all that. So they stand tall in this area. Politics will definitely be in there because you need trusted people who share your vision and all that. And remember, it is the party which is in government. So obviously, we'll make more use of its party members who are also Ghanaians and they have what it takes. So I don't have any problem with that. All that I'm looking forward to is what? Results. Because politics is nothing but contest of ideas and a point in time referendum of your work. So ideas that you have, throw them out, give us results. Because a time will come, you account for the stewardship of your office, and that's a function of what? Your work.
You think that the new government has given any indication they're going to fight corruption so far?
Oh, so far, what we are seeing, oral is a good testimony that it begins to send shivers down the spine of those who feel that they have something to hide, those who don't believe that this is a good call. My hope and prayer and that they'll be able to move it to another direction where you give the state institution and the government will have the political wherewithal and the courage to be able to prosecute those who are found foul of the law,
right.
So that we get a relief. If the government is able to do that, it's going to get more support and the government will be able to energize its base. The failure to do this, obviously, the public will not be happy.
Thank you very much, Dr. Kwame Asah-Asante is a senior lecturer at Department of Political Science, University of Ghana. Thank you very much, Doc, for coming through. We also we've been joined via Zoom. Yao Apia-Latte is a financial advisory at Deloitte Ghana. Earlier, we spoke to Yache Derek Emmanuel. He's a research and policy analyst at the Institute for Energy Security, IAS, and together we're having a conversation around the 12 days of His Excellency John Dramani Mahama in